The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. The following episode was recorded on May 31st, 2024. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today we will conclude our conversation for now about the recent 34 felony conviction of former President Donald Trump. We're going to be talking a little bit about what we call knuckleheads, those people that believe the rhetoric and those people that probably should know better and what this means. And finally, we'll be talking about some of the fallout that we've seen just after the verdict. And we're going to ask ourselves, is this who we are as a nation going forward into the future? So let's listen in. And to Scott's point about knuckleheads, yeah, and I think we make a huge mistake, and I think a lot of people make this mistake. We see what we see on the news, and we see what we see in social media, and most of the Trump supporters appear to be total knuckleheads. I mean, just absolute insane people. But you've still got these people, as we were discussing earlier, Ted Cruz, these senators who are very smart people who are also on the bandwagon. And I can also say, just in my circle of friends here in South Carolina, many educated people repeat the same stuff that what we call the knuckleheads. I mean, when we were out Wednesday night, and this was before the verdict had come in, and they were twisting themselves into knots as to why this was unfair, this whole trial. And one of them is a lawyer. And I'm sitting there going, everything you know about the law, and I totally respect this person. I think he's absolutely a good, great lawyer. And I'm sorry, you're twisting yourselves into knots because this is against your guy. And it's everybody else's fault. The idea of, and they repeat the same rhetoric. Well, this is the Biden Justice Department. The the Manhattan DA has nothing to do with the federal justice system. The federal justice system could not make the Manhattan DA bring a case if they wanted to. That's just not the way the system works. And again, this is a lawyer. He knows this, but he takes the logic, everything he knows, he throws it out the window, and he basically twists himself into knots in well, if it's against my guy, it must be bad. So it's, again, we see the knuckleheads that we see on social media and sometimes presented on some of the what they call major news networks, which I would disagree that they're really not news. And they present them as that's who we're talking about. We're not just talking about them. We're talking about some actually logical people who fall into the same trap. And how do you get them out? Again, Brooklyn, I still don't think he's going to win. I truly do not think he's going to win. I find it unfathomable. But
Mark, I hope you're right. You're right about government shutdown.
I hope I'm right about something too.
His predictions usually ironclad, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, the Mets will make a comeback sometime in the second half of the season.
So Mark, do you know a bigger knucklehead maybe than Mo Brooks? Remember Mo Brooks?
Oh yeah. No. Well, okay. Martin Taylor Greene.
All right. So Mo Brooks was one of the guys who spoke at the Ellipse that day, right?
Right.
And he actually showed up wearing a bulletproof vest. He was wearing body armor underneath his overcoat because he knew that it was going to be violent and just didn't want to be like hit by a stray bullet. Okay, so that's how big a knucklehead Mo Brooks is or was. Mo Brooks ran for U.S. Senate, lost, The other candidate was the one who got the endorsement of Trump. And Mo Brooks tweeted this morning, at real Donald Trump, guilty of 34 felonies, perjury of 12 random citizens, in parentheses, none sought job, close parentheses. GOP faces choice. USA future at stake. Keep Trump as nominee and gamble USA's future, or, in capital letters, replace Trump with a good character nominee and beat the stew out of Biden. So there you go. Mo Brooks back from the knuckleheaddom.
Well,
interesting.
Yeah,
got a similar one and Mo Brooks, by the way, who said President Trump asked me to rescind the 2020 election and immediately remove Joe Biden. John Bolton, another longtime knucklehead. For a while there, the national security advisor.
Yep.
To Donald Trump, who was left off the plane or something like that in the meeting in Korea with the North Koreans. He has also said, look, it's time for the GOP to find another candidate. I don't know if that's possible. I really don't. I don't know how that all can work, at this point. But I suppose anything is possible, right?
Well, George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's ex-husband, Trump, one of Trump's closest advisors, donated almost $1 million to the Biden campaign. Mm-hmm. Not because he overly agrees with Biden's policies. I mean, because he's a lifelong conservative. He's a member of the Federalist Society. He's a lifelong conservative. But he understands how bad Trump would be in another term. So you hope that these people would, resonate with a broader audience. But how do you combat Space Laser Taylor Greene? How do you combat Boehner? How do you combat Ted Cruz and Tim Scott and Marco Rubio and all? And again, I did not see that. Nikki Haley. How do you combat these people? I mean, since he dropped out, we have not heard from Chris Christie at all. You never hear from him anymore. As somebody mentioned here earlier, Hogan, the former governor, the very popular former governor of Maryland, a Republican who was running for Senate, and I think he'd make a great senator. I think he'd make a pretty good president, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think he'd make a better president than a senator. I think he said that, actually.
I agree, because he's a senator. He's a governor, and therefore he's an executive, right? So, and somebody came out and said, "You're killing your political future by doing this."
I think the person said your future is over. You've already killed. You just killed your career, or something like that. I forget where I heard that.
And he comes from one of those dynasty families of Maryland. The Hogans, his father was in politics. I believe his grandfather was in politics. This is like almost like the Bushes, where everybody was involved in politics in some way or another. So just because he came out and said something against Donald Trump, all of the good, and I know the old saying, one-off shit takes care of all the attaboys. I understand that saying. But you've got to have a higher collective memory. And why is it the only collective memory you have is when it revolves around one person who, and I agree with Scott, is a convicted felon 34 times?
Yes. Yep. With more trials to come if some of the judges and the Supreme Court justices would have some gumption and go ahead and follow the law and go ahead with their trials rather than hanging back. So there would have been more trials and more, I hope, presumably more convictions, perhaps. But yeah. And Scott, what you said earlier about the WikiLeaks and the stolen information that was handed to Trump, that's very interesting. Is that credible?
Just the theory.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good. We're good at theories. We're really good at theories. I mean, the way I look at this is that this is very telling. The next few months is going to be extremely telling about America as a country.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess I'm going to bring to the last question here. Donald J. Trump is the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party for president of the United States. He is, at this point in time, as Scott has pointed out correctly, a convicted felon 34 times. Now, of course, he still has the right to appeal. Totally, that's perfectly fine. But it doesn't change the fact that he's a convicted felon 34 times. He has been convicted of defamation.
Defamation?
That's what I said, did it? Okay. I was eating my salad, so okay. And no, that
That's
wasn't ice cream.
Carolina
It was a
accent.
salad. That was South Carolina accent. Anyway, he's defamation. He has been found for a whole bunch of money right now, $460 million for business practices that were deemed illegal and inappropriate. Why is it that he can still run for president but can't vote in some states? Is this something that needs to truly be corrected?
Well, I don't think the founders ever thought that we would fall this low. Right?
Well, that's probably
Yes.
The framers of
agree.
the Constitution were like, "Nah, we don't."
Nah, they would never do that.
We're not gonna. Nobody would
way.
ever nominate a guy who was
Maybe it never
convicted
crossed
of a
their
crime.
minds that would even be a question.
Well, it didn't. It didn't. I mean, again, probably never. I mean, the first person they put in as the chief executive was George Washington.
Yeah.
Come on. And every one of them afterwards were all founding fathers: Adams, Madison, Monroe, Jefferson. I mean, they were all founding fathers at some point in time. So no, nobody ever thought you were going to get somebody dishonest in there.
Yeah.
But maybe is it time? I mean, and I'm going to say this: this is not something that could be done through the Congress. This is something you've got to have a referendum.
An amendment, correct?
Well, no, actually, it doesn't require an amendment. What it requires is, what if each state was to say, forget the federal government, because they're not going to do anything.
Right.
What if each state was to say, you cannot be on the ballot in our state for federal office if you are a convicted felon?
Well, then wouldn't the Supreme Court has already ruled on that and said, well, you have to, the Congress has to create a law, right? Because Colorado tried to do that, and the Supreme Court said, no, that's a federal issue.
Well, no, yes, but Colorado tried to do it as it related to an amendment of the federal Constitution, 14th Amendment, third clause. This would not be in that. This has nothing to do with the Constitution.
Okay. So
this has zero to do with the Constitution. There is no law. There is no constitutional amendment.
Right.
So my question is okay, that's why the Supreme Court struck it down. The state cannot interpret that amendment of the Constitution. But since it does not exist at federal law or in the Constitution, the states, I'm thinking, could probably say, no, okay, we're not relying on a constitutional amendment. We're relying on the fact that our state rules say you cannot be on the ballot for any office in our state if you are a convicted felon.
Yeah, and I'll probably have to wait until the next election cycle, but it wouldn't be a bad thing for people to do, just in case it happens again.
I mean, let's face it. The federal government isn't going to act. That's not going to happen. I mean, it's just not to their best interests. I mean, can you imagine how many congressmen might get booted out if that was a federal rule? You cannot be convicted of a felony. Now, I don't know how many are there that have been convicted, but I don't think probably very many, if any. But, again, somebody said the other day, well, this is Donald Trump's first offense. Well, I'm sorry, yes, but it's 34 felony charges that you've been found guilty of. It's your first offense because nobody's ever prosecuted you before.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's
it's
why it's your
amazing.
first offense. It's not because
It's
you were,
amazing to me.
Mother Teresa, as he compared himself to all those years. That is not why this is your first offense. It's because nobody ever, tried to.
He's been able to weasel. He's been
And
able
the
to get
nice
away
thing
with
is, he is not the Teflon Don.
All it takes one time getting knocked
Just one
down.
time.
Yeah.
And now the question is where do we go? Where do we go from here? So last thing, thoughts.
Well,
Where does this go? Where does this go from here, Brooklyn?
Well, I wish it would go somewhere. I mean, I do wish that. Well, I don't know if the judge has already indicated somewhat that Trump will not see any jail time. He's not in a marvelous position, it seems to me. He's got a tough decision to make. I mean, I'm hopeful that he will, Judge Merchan, I'm hopeful he will put Trump in prison. That's
not gonna happen.
my hope.
Not gonna happen. Forget that. That's not gonna happen. Don't get your hopes up.
That's what I'm afraid of. It's not going to happen.
And probation.
Yeah, see, and so, but would anybody else who's not running for president, whose name isn't Trump, with all the threats and all this and all that and all the contempt and the 34 charges, would that person be apt to see jail time? And if the answer is yes, then Trump should also. I don't care if he's running for president, that shouldn't matter. It's the offenses and the quality of behavior and so on and so forth that matters if he is being treated equally under the law, which he already has been treated more leniently than anybody else would have. And I would love to see Cannon be replaced, and I would love to see the Supreme Court do something. But I'm afraid those things are not going to happen, and we're going to wind up with Trump, Biden this fall. And as we have discussed on our show before, on our podcast before, it's going to be up to we the people. And we're going to have to hope that the massive albatross of the Electoral College does not come dragging itself in to pull us all down into the gigantic hole from which there's not going to be an escape this time.
Scott?
By letting Trump win. Yeah.
So my best guess is that RFK will get more Trump supporters to support him. And that I'm not even sure he's going to get on every ballot. I know that they're working on that, but that he's going to continue to draw support from Trump voters who find themselves not wanting to support Trump because he's guilty of crime. And won't be going over to Joe Biden, but might attach themselves to RFK. I think that'll probably happen. As far as the 100 million votes is concerned, I think that's aspirational. I think that's what they should be shooting for, and I think that they should, really announce that and do what they need to do to get that. And you already see things like the abortion ballot measure in Florida is still alive. DeSantis hasn't found a way to kill it. So abortion will be on the ballot in Florida and other states, and that will drive up turnout in those states. Whether it's decisive for the presidency or not, I can't say, obviously. But I do think that it will drive up turnout. Now, they may vote for that one thing and then nobody else. Certainly possible. But a lot of times, if they're already in the room anyway, they might decide to cast a vote for everyone. Let's see. What else? I think that so you mentioned Larry Hogan before. Larry Hogan is going to lose a lot of support in Maryland that he would have had otherwise. And so that seat might be safer blue than we thought before. I'd say that's a very, very good thing. Today, Joe Manchin decided that he is going to leave the Democratic Party. He announced that he is now an independent, and he might actually run for U.S. Senate as an independent, which would probably hurt Jim Justice's campaign. Don't ask me who the Democratic candidate is in West Virginia, because I really have no idea. But that person just got a big boost, I think, if Joe Manchin decides that he's going to run as an independent in the state of West Virginia. He may run for governor again. I suppose he could do that. He's already been the governor, but certainly he could run for U.S. Senate, and that seat might he might take enough votes away from Jim Justice, who, by the way, was once a Democrat. And so that seat doesn't flip over to the Republicans. I'm not really sure where else. We'll do a congressional thing at some point, I suppose.
Yes.
But as far as the presidency is concerned, look, this has to hurt. It's not going to hurt with his base. The lunatics are going to be lunaticking. That's what they do. And nothing is stopping them from doing that, and they're going to continue to do it, but it will be fewer people than before.
Okay. And my take on this is, and this is from Donny O'Sullivan, which is a CNN reporter, in one of the articles he wrote, and I'm quoting this. Online forums that have previously been linked to mass shootings, people are threatening violence and attempting to publicly identify the 12 New York jurors who on Thursday decided to convict former President Donald Trump.
Yes, that is sick.
The calls for retribution began immediately after the verdict was announced. Quote from one of the posts: "Hope these jurors face some street justice," one anonymous user on a pro-Trump forum wrote. Another suggestively asked, "Wouldn't it be interesting if just one person from Trump's legal team anonymously leaked the names of the jurors?" Overnight, however, anonymous internet users on sites that are known havens of hate and harassment began sharing names, home addresses, and other personal information belonging to people they say might have been members of the jury, a practice known as doxing. So when Scott says this was a good day for the United States, it also brought out the worst of us. It allowed the worst of us to come out. And I agree with Scott. It was a good day for justice in the United States, that we found that even the powerful can be held accountable, but there is always the double-edged sword to this. And this type of activity, which, again, Donny O'Sullivan, who really has no dog in the fight because he's actually Irish, but he does report for CNN. This is the fallout. We're just they might be the jurors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might.
And it might. This, as Scott says, this is sick stuff. And sometimes when you have a pivotal moment in history for a nation, yes, it shows the strength of the nation, but at the same time, it has a tendency to bring out the absolute worst. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the absolute worst.
That would be the worst.
That would be the worst. All right, guys. Good talking to you as always. And yes, we will do a congressional map coming up, no doubt about it. Take a look at what this might mean, because I agree. I think this is going to have a huge impact, not only for the president, but down ballot. My first thought was Montana. I began thinking Montana. And so, could very well have a very important impact.
Well, I hope nobody gets killed over this, It's not
so do I.
Yeah. He's really not worth
definitely.
it.
Yeah,
really,
definitely.
especially if it's somebody that wasn't even on the jury, but might be.
Yeah. Well, even if it were someone else, I understand it. And even if they I hate to say shoot the right person or correct person who's on the jury. This is someone doing a civic duty who was asked, and this is the outcome. And if the convicted felon were not named Trump, nobody would care. Well, the families might care, or the victims might care, but over Trump,
Trump.
please.
Hey, by the way, Brooke, I don't know if you saw what happened to Officer Fanon's family.
Oh yeah. Oh
Did
yeah.
you see that?
Yes,
Officer
I did.
Fanon is the guy who got tased on January 6th. And he was up speaking with Officer Dunn and Robert De Niro outside the courthouse on Wednesday, I think it was, or Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
I knew. No, I didn't see that. I knew Robert De Niro was there, but I haven't seen everything, so I missed that.
And Fanon has a gripe, a good one, I think, against Trump for sicking these people on him, and they, in retaliation, they did what's known as swatting. They sent a manifesto supposedly written by him to the SWAT team, or the DA's office, and said, I am going to kill my mother, and I'm going to go shoot up a school that Fanon had gone to when he was a kid. And the SWAT team showed up at his mother's house in the middle of the night and scared the hell out of her, And I forget exactly. I think 87 years old, in her nightgown with the SWAT team outside her door. So, they're capable of sick things. That's a sick thing to do to an old lady. And it's a sick thing to do to a guy who, got really, really badly beaten up on January 6th, just trying to defend the Capitol. And, man, the idea that there would be violence over this, I mean, it did occur to me. But it just seems so crazy that I really hope that nothing happens. I mean, so far I haven't heard of anything happening, and threats and stupidity is one thing, but certainly that would be going way out there for this.
Unfortunately, It's early days. It's only early days. The verdict came in yesterday, and we have a long road ahead of us. And as I say, this is you never hear of Biden supporters or the Democrats doing something like this.
No.
And this is what we've devolved into, and it's a shame.
The Law and Order Party. And I mean, sorry, Mark, I cut you off. The only thing you hear is Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, "Oh, the Democrats and the killings that the Democrats or the left or whatever do or have already begun." But of course, she doesn't say anything specific. But now, of course, I mean, the violence is the real that's actually happening is from the right.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm going to just say this.
The people should not.
The people that put this stuff out there, this, the swatting and the doxing and things like that, there's no hard evidence to say that they are from the right.
Mm-hmm.
This may be just people who are using this as an excuse to create chaos and violence. They may not even care who Donald Trump is.
That's quite possible.
This is their excuse. So, I'm always cautious about that because, I remember many protests that have happened over the years in my lifetime. Yes, you had a core group of people that were out there protesting or, the rightful protesting for some egregious social policy or social condition that they were trying to change. And there always is that group that comes into that. And you can't tell the difference. of who is and who is not. And that's the shame. So hopefully this is not the what the right has turned into. Hopefully. But unfortunately, this is one of those things when people ask me, why do you not like Donald Trump? Because he has allowed this to happen. His division, his creation of division has given cover to what could be these people.
And he's encouraged it.
All right, guys, that's all the time we have. This will be,
Yes.
I'll get a whole bunch out of this. You guys take
Yes.
care. Have yourself a good weekend.
You too.
You too. Thanks, Scott. See you next time.
See you all.
So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Podkite, who does all our analytics, iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source of music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.